Now, I'm very excited to welcome back an NFL and college football specialist, as well as the editor and host of the Vegas Sports and Information Network, and Mr. Matt Youmans from vsin.com. You can follow Matt on Twitter at Matt Youmans247. This segment is brought to you by Circus Sports. For the best football contests in all of the land, please visit circusports.com/contest for over 16 million in guaranteed prizes. Getting Circa Millions and Circa Survivor. Matt, man, we haven't talked since March Madness. It's dead summer right now. You're a little busier than you'd like to be, though, from what I'm hearing.
Well, I did get plenty of time on the golf course this summer and a couple short vacations. But yeah, working hard on college football, trying to get our VSiN college football preview out and trying to finish up the Big Ten. Working on that all night last night. Maybe get a couple hours sleep. But it's great to be on with you today. And you just get excited when football season's close because we had so many slow days. And May, June, first half of July. It's just great when NFL training camp opens. So you feel like that scene in the Shawshank Redemption where he had to swim through all the sewage to get to freedom. I feel like we just came out of it, and we're in the freedom part of it now, and football's here because this is what sports betting world revolves around is football season. As much as we love some of the other events, man, there are some slow nights in May, June, July, especially when you're trying to host a 3-hour show. And baseball betting talk can only take you so far. People love the football, and I do too. And it's great to be back. Great to be on the show with you today.
No, thanks, man. And yeah, people love the football. It is like the light at the end of the tunnel there, crawling through sewage, man, and filth. But once you get to the other side, it's wide open here. But now I'm starting to get the itch a little bit. So I'm excited, and I think now it's almost like you count down the days. Baseball's doing fine, but it gets a little boring. I'm ready for some football. It's in about a week. We got the Hall of Fame game with the Bears in Canton, Ohio. I think they're playing Cleveland. I have to recheck that.
Texans.
Okay, the Texans in Canton. So I actually haven't even handicapped the preseason yet. That is my next task. Now that I'm doing all my college power rings. But hey, some big changes at VSiN a little bit. What can you tell us a little bit about what happened there with the ownership?
Musburger Media, which is Brian Musburger, his dad Todd, Uncle Brent, Brian Musburger's wife Michelle. They partnered with some investors, Bill Adey, who was one of the original VSiN founders, to purchase the VSiN network back from DraftKings after it feels like 3 years, I think. And there were some positives with the DraftKings ownership. I think everybody's glad to be independent again. Let's put it that way. And Derek Stevens at Circus Sports has been phenomenal in his support of the network, and it's great that we broadcast from downtown Vegas now, and looking forward to having a little bit more freedom and independence, let's put it that way, with the content, the way we control everything at the network. And I think there's going to be one change I think it's going to be really difficult for some listeners to adjust to, but there's always change, and a lot of people are resistant to it. Eventually, it's going to turn into a good thing, but you're going to see a handful of changes in the network and some of our shows on the lineup before the football season starts. I think in the big picture, all this is going to be positive, and most people are going to love it. And that's basically the bottom line. I'm not going to say anything negative about DraftKings or what we went through. I think, like I said, there were some positives, and it's going to turn out to be the best thing here with Musburger Media taking control of it again.
Yeah, the man who started it all, really, there, Musburger and his brother and kid, and I think that's wonderful. And I love flexibility, and I think that's definitely going to help VSiN blossom. So I'm all for it. Last year, of course, we talked about some fast food. I know you've been diving into your college football preview over at VSiN. I think that's going to be a wonderful preview. I cannot wait to read that. I know you're buried, but when might these fast food rankings come out? I'm always a big fan of fast food, as you know.
Yeah, I am too. I think about it every day. I don't think about writing the rankings and how it's going to come out, but I think about which fast food spots I'm going to hit every day. Paulie Howard of VSIN was asking me sometime in June when the fast food rankings are going to come out. I said, look, man, first I got to work on the NFL magazine. Then I got to work on the college football magazine. Also have to take a few days off. Then I'll start thinking about fast food once we get towards the end of July, early August. I've got a couple franchises in mind that are going to make a step up in the rankings this year, but to be honest, I have not given that a whole lot of thought. I'll sit down and figure out my power ratings for all, let's see, I got about 60 franchises on the list. I'll do a top 50. I'll do the power ratings here in about a week and start writing that. For some reason, people love it. I'm surprised how much fanfare, let's say, that thing gets, because actually when we do that show on Follow the Money and then put out the column, and people eat up, pun intended, people eat up the fast food rankings. It's a hell of a lot of debate. It's one of our most debated show topics of the entire year. It really is. And Mitch Moss and Paul Howard love doing it on their show.
Well, man, if fast food's American.
First week of August, I'll say, if you want a target date.
Okay, so that sounds great to me. No pressure. No, it's important that you get these nailed down correctly. So take your time. Fast food is just very American, man.
Yeah.
Everyone. It's just, and that's where it originated, and that's why we love it so much. And it's definitely a debated topic. I think it's fun to debate it because I've learned about more restaurants when I hear you guys talk about it, and more places to check out. But speaking of fast food, it's Culver's today is their anniversary, their 40th anniversary of starting out in Sauk City. And I've been to the original Culver's in Sauk City. So quick little story here. It's one of those that got away, but I was too young. I was probably 13 years old or so. This is 35 years ago or so. I'm riding up north in the big van up to Minocqua with my parents, and my little brother and we just had Culver's, I think back then we liked the frozen custard more than the butter burgers, but either way, we just thought it was genius, and there's only a few in the state. I'm like, man, I could see this blowing up. So I'm talking to my brother, like, imagine if we could just open up 3 Culver's,
Right.
and way before, and then we asked my parents about it, who are very risk adverse, probably never bet on sports in their lives. They're like, hell no, what are you talking about? I'm like, why don't we start this? It's going to pick up. And then, of course, 35 years later and over 900 locations, me and my 9-year-old brother, when I was 13, were right, but we just did not have the funds to go out at the time to open one, man. But it's just a missed opportunity when you're a young buddy.
Yeah, if you could have pulled that off, you'd be worth tens of millions of dollars right now. I'm guessing, just estimate. Yeah, I love Culver's. It's funny you say it's a 40th anniversary. I first tried Culver's when I lived in Chicago, I'm going to say about 25 years ago. And I thought, man, this place is great. But then you move out to Vegas, and there's no Culver's out here on the West Coast, so you kind of forget about it. And when I went to Culver's again a few years ago up in Utah, I was like, man, now I remember how great this place is. I was down in your neighborhood. I went down to Tucson, Phoenix, Lake Havasu at the end of June, early July, and I hit Culver's about 5 times on that trip. Those butter burger, I can't get enough of the butter burgers. Like you said, the custard, everything. There's only one crappy thing on the Culver's menu, and everything else is good. And the one crappy thing is steamed broccoli. And I can't believe that Culver's would even make the mistake of putting steamed broccoli on the menu. That stuff smells so bad, it can ruin the atmosphere and the dining experience for anybody in the restaurant if one person orders it. That's the only criticism I have of Culver's. Get that crap off the menu.
It's for the member of the family that's either a vegetarian or a keto diet.
Leave that person at home. There's no place in fast food for stuff like that.
I admit it. I agree with you, but it's so bad. It's almost like an insult to them, like a slap in the face. Go eat some broccoli, then dip that in some ranch if you're even allowed to. I guess that's all they can do. But it is a debated topic. And by the way, speaking of debates, I'm pretty sure you can score at least 2 to 3 goals against a professional goalie.
I hope so. I was practicing. I'll tell you what. I mean, I did go out and practice because I wanted to make sure I could back up the talk, and I got a little bit better at it as time went on because I haven't kicked a soccer ball for years, and you think, oh, it's easy. All you do is run around and kick the ball, but there's some strategy to it, the penalty kick stuff, and I did need to practice it to get a little bit better. I'm with you. I think 2 or 3 is probably the right number. I'm pretty confident in 2. I'm hopeful I can get more.
Yeah, I'd set it at least 2.5 to 3 if I was setting it against a professional goalie. I mean, I have a friend in high school club soccer, which isn't like pro, but these kids are amazing. They travel, and we can score against him. It's the goal's huge. Yeah, and then you got to look one way and shoot the other. Sometimes there is some strategy to that, and then sometimes they'll expect that, and then they'll dive the other way anyway. But yeah, I mean, out of 10 times, Jesus, you'd have to be extremely unlucky or pretty bad if you can't get that ball in that massive area. But for all you listeners out there, this was just a big topic in VSiN when I think it was Matt and it was Paul, maybe Stone.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Paul Howard.
Paul Howard. Paul Howard. Yeah, Paul Howard. That's what it wasn't Paulie Stone. It was Paul Howard from the first show. And so they were saying that you couldn't score against a professional goalie. And I'm like, hell no, they can definitely score. Unless you're in a freaking wheelchair, they're going to score against a professional goalie. So there you go, man. I'm on your side for that. So let's move on to a little bit of NFL. Now, real quick, there's changes always, right? There's rule changes. I suppose the big 2 are the kickoff and the hip drop tackle that I'm not sure what's going to happen with that. How is that going to affect our handicapping or even sports betting in general for NFL?
Well, that might be a better question, and that's something we're going to debate. We talked about a little bit, but I haven't really done the research on this to see exactly what it's going to be worth. You would think, if you're a totals bettor, it's going to impact you a little bit more because it should increase scoring a little bit. I don't know how much, what the expectation would be of, points added per game because of these additional first downs on the penalty nonsense and the improved field position on the kickoffs. I think Chris Sanook could probably be better to answer a question like that. I did ask somebody recently, and he didn't really have the answer what he thought it was going to be worth. I'll say this: I don't bet a lot of totals. I bet mostly sides, and it's going to be random whether it helps you or hurts you. You have no idea. I don't think there's a way to handicap really how these rules are going to change things. I will say this: I feel like the NFL is kind of like government. Too many rules, too many laws, just convolutes everything, right? It's I don't know why the competition committee in the NFL feels the need to add stuff every year. Football is already a very complicated game. Imagine if you're a fan who's just getting into it. You can't understand what the hell's going on half the time. What's that flag for? Why is that play called back? NFL's got so many rules, and it's headed in the direction of flag football. Is the biggest criticism is what this rule change is going to be in talking about hip drop tackles.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a nuisance to us as bettors, fans, viewers. It's going to be a nuisance. It's something that's going to annoy the hell out of you when it goes against you, right? You're going to be complaining, and I think I don't think it's good for the game.
I don't think so either. It's just more and more variance. What handicappers hate is variance. If we can get rid of every single piece of variance, we'd be a hell of a lot better. More variance helps the bad better just based on luck happening, and more variance hurts the good better just over time. It's you put more variance and different things happen. Now we're wondering if there's going to be another arbitrary hip drop tackle when the Chiefs are driving down by 6 to the Chargers. I don't know. It's just when do you call it? I've seen penalties called at terrible times. Pass interference is the example that I can only think about it because that's just another arbitrary call. Although that one can cost you 50 yards. I'm sick of the addition of this stuff, and I think this is going to have to change at some point. Hip drop tackle. This is tackle football, man. Please, Goodell. He gets all the credit because the sports gambling industry kind of came in big with the legalization and PASPA being changed, and he gets the credit while doing absolutely nothing good for the sport. Right. That's what drives me nuts a little bit. So we'll see. But I mean, football used to be a beatable sport, and it's getting harder and harder. So let's hope that college doesn't keep that leakage into it. And maybe we can stick with some of those. But
if you think about the NFL, all the penalties that keep drives alive, right? Because you're trying to increase offense in the game, roughing the quarterback, roughing the passer. You got these defensive holding and pass interference calls. Now you're going to add hip drop tackles. All these things that when defenses get a stop, let's say you bet on that team, your defense gets a stop. Oh, it's a hip drop tackle, automatic first down. Right now I'm watching NFL Network and a replay of the Buccaneers-Lions playoff game. And one thing I like about the Super Bowl is the refs tend to get out of the way, right? They say don't call offensive holding all the time. They call fewer penalties. They let the players play, and they don't want the officials to be a huge part of the game. And typically that makes for a better Super Bowl when that happens. Early in the NFL regular season, the officials are so involved, right? It's micromanaging, hands-on everything. Yeah. And I think that annoys a lot of us as bettors. Like you say, it's variance. You don't know when it's going to help you or hurt you. It seems like it hurts you more often than not, but maybe that's just a personal bias.
It does. Well, variance in general. I mean, I've used this example a lot of times. If you look an extreme bettor and he wins 90% of his bets on a perfect no variant game, and then you add a bunch of different outcomes, he's going to drop to 70%. Well, the same opposite, 10% better goes up. It's just adding variables. It always hurts the good bettor when more often than not, because variance can only hurt you when you're doing great. If you look at the extreme. So I have that conversation a lot with our listeners and other people, and it's frustrating, but let's hope that they just make it a fine, and they don't, and hopefully it's not called during the game. I don't know what to expect either, boss, but it's going to be annoying. But let's move on to some NFL. And when we start with the NFC North, there's obviously the Lions sitting there, and the Packers are second, Bears third, Vikings fourth. Who do you have, or do you have any plays in the NFC North from a futures or a win total perspective?
I was on with you a year ago at this time, and I was really touting the Packers. And all last summer on VSiN, I was talking about the Packers. I thought they were going to be the surprise team, the team that was going to make the biggest jump in the NFC, kind of like the Eagles the previous year when I was talking about the Eagles. Sure. And I didn't look good halfway through the season. Packers got off to a really poor start. They had injuries, running back on the offensive line. Offense was not coming together. Jordan Love didn't look that good. And then finally, in the second half of the season, it did come together. And Packers should have beat the 49ers in that playoff game. They choked it up, blew the game, just like the Lions did the next week, except the Lions' gag job was even worse. So I'm a little bit concerned now. I don't want to tout the Packers again, even though I like the team a lot, because you know how the NFL works. When a team gets too popular with the betting public, you need to jump off the bandwagon or look to fade, right? It's the follow or fade. And when a team gets too popular with the public, I'm not going to fade the Packers, but I'm going to stay neutral for right now. And I don't. Obviously, if you had to rank them right now, I think it'd be Lions, Packers, Bears, Vikings. But the only futures bet I have in this division of any sort is Bears under 9 on the win total.
So you found the 9?
Oh yeah, okay. There's a 9 right now at the Westgate Superbook across the street, and there's been 9 at Teasers and Will Hill. You got to look around. I know there's plenty of 8.5s, but I just like 3 weeks ago walked over to Westgate, or actually drove over. So across the street from where I live, but I bet the Bears under 9 at -110, and it was still there a few days ago when I looked at it. So they got to get to 10-7, obviously, to beat you, and that's a lot to ask. Now, the Bears' schedule, the first 2/3 of it is pretty soft. One of the, you'll see, twist in the schedule is the Bears do not play a division game until week 11. So all of their division games are stacked on the back end. And the last third of their schedule is much tougher than the first 2/3. They're probably going to get off to a good start. You're going to feel a little uneasy playing under the win total of 9 because there's a lot of winnable games on that schedule. But also, I don't think Caleb Williams is going to come in and light the league on fire and be the next Patrick Mahomes right away. I also don't like Matt Eberflus as a head coach. He's a good defensive coordinator, not a great head coach. So I question the Bears' leadership a little bit, and their coach I don't like, and a rookie quarterback who paints his fingernails, by the way. I don't like that either.
Shots fired, man.
But you know what? I do like Caleb Williams a lot as a player. The thing is, some of these rookie quarterbacks, and Bo Nix's going to be another one with the Broncos, culture shock maybe, or just a dramatic step up in the levels of defense you're facing. These guys came out of the Pac-12 where the defenses were really, really soft for the most part. You saw what happened to Caleb Williams. He got roughed up when he had to play a road game at Notre Dame last season. I think there's going to be times where he looks like a rookie. There's going to be times where he looks sensational. But there's a lot to ask of the Bears to get to 10 wins when you got the Packers and the Lions in that division, and the back third of that schedule is as tough as it is. Can the Bears go 9-8? Certainly, but that's why you have to play under 9 and not under 8.5.
Yeah,
you got to force the Bears to win 10 to beat you, and that's the only bet I've got in the NFC North right now.
Don't get greedy and take the plus 140 on the 8.5. Take the 9 at minus 120 or whatever. 110, of course, better. But I everything you said, I don't need to. You said it perfectly there. I completely agree with that. Really hard to get 10 wins right away. I think a lot of teams are going to be between the 7 and 10 this year. Personally, I think the NFL is kind of evening out, and I have the Lions to win it at plus 150. You know, I mean, I think the biggest win was just keeping Ben Johnson again. You know, their offensive coordinator. I think plus 150 on the Lions, I'm okay with. The Packers are up and coming, but now Jordan Love's going to get the $250 million. And one thing, at least about the Bears, is they don't have to pay their rookie quarterback for a while. What the Packers did and what the Atlanta Falcons are doing is like they draft a quarterback to sit for a few years. By the time he shows any inclination of being good, he's in a contract here. He's just sit out. It's like there's no grace period now. Now you went from paying Aaron Rodgers, taking 1 year off. Actually, I thought they had to pay him some last year, and then going right into paying a max deal for a quarterback. So that does not work out well, man. Lions is what I have. NFC South. And speaking of people being on teams, we can throw the Houston, right? No, not Houston Texans. The Atlanta Falcons. I was just talking about the Atlanta Falcons. We'll get to Houston later because they're another public team. But NFC South, I'm going to admit, I looked and it got up to 320. I took Tampa to win it today. It was the last bet I made. At 320, okay. It was in the 200s before when I first handicapped it. I leaned it. The number got big enough for me. I like how experienced they are up front. They drafted trenches for their first 2 picks. I like drafting trenches. Baker Mayfield showed that he's a very, very live quarterback in a very, very bad division. And I think Atlanta, I don't like Raheem Morris that much. I think he's okay, but he had a bad stint when he coached for Tampa. I'm on Tampa to win the division at 320 now. So what about you?
You know, I don't disagree with you. I'm going to tell you something that I couldn't believe when I first heard it. Paul Howard told me when he was looking at the VSiN NFL betting guide, because I was one of the first to go in there and put it in my picks for division winners and playoff teams. So I didn't see what everyone else picked. We had a panel of 20 hosts and handicappers picking division winners, and 0 picked the Buccaneers to win the NFC South. And as soon as he told me that, I said, maybe the Buccaneers are a good bet to win the NFC South, right? Because if everybody agrees on something, you look the other way.
Right.
I picked the Falcons kind of by default when I was doing it because it's a division of bad coaches and mediocre teams, and I really can't find anything to like. I know some people are trying to go contrarian. I know a couple sharp guys going contrarian saying the Panthers. I look at the Panthers, I just don't see it. I don't see how it can happen. The Saints, I don't like Dennis Allen. There's just not enough about the Saints to make you think that team can win the division. Derek Carr, Dennis Allen, I'm not going to jump on board. I was anti-Saints, last year as well. So, yeah, can the Buccaneers repeat? Why not? I think I'm starting to like that a little bit more. And like I said, I'm watching that Bucs-Lions playoff replay right now as we speak. And that Buccaneers team's pretty solid. I just think a lot of people aren't believers in Baker Mayfield. I actually have been. I don't think he's a superstar. He's a tough competitor. He's good enough to win you games. And he reminds me a little bit of like Phillip Rivers in the way he was such a fierce competitor and a winner. So, yeah, I would give the Buccaneers a decent shot. Buccaneers, Falcons, kind of flip a coin. You're getting plus. You said you got plus 320.
320 today at DraftKings.
That's a crazy number. That's a lot of value, I think, in that number with the Bucs. So even though I picked the Falcons by default, I think you probably got the best bet there.
Oh, thank you. You are allowed to switch, my man. They have just experience you still have Chris Godwin there and Mike Evans. Mike Evans is just such an underrated receiver over the past 5, 6, 7 years. Their offensive line's back together. They got some, their defense is old, but they've shed some of the older guys. I mean, I know Levante David's still there. They still got Vita Vea clogging up the run. When he missed time, they were bad against the run. And last year, you remember when he came back, he started stopping the run again. I thought, what the hell? Let's give it a shot here at 320. Let's move on to the NFC East. We have Dallas and the Eagles, and then obviously the two doldrums with the Giants and the Commanders. What are your thoughts?
Eagles all the way. I wrote about this right around the NFL draft when the Eagles took the cornerbacks from Toledo and Iowa with their first 2 picks, and they addressed some of the needs they had to address on defense. And I looked at that point, I looked at the DraftKings division odds. Not every book had those up at the time, but the Cowboys were plus 115 in the NFC East, and the Eagles were plus 135. And I wrote up my analysis of the draft, and I put some bets in my column on vsin.com, and I said, Eagles plus 135, best bet in the division. Wrong team is favored. And look what the betting market's done, in the last 2.5 months since then. Eagles are now right around even money or plus 105, and you can find the Cowboys at plus 150 at some spots. I don't see what Dallas did to improve in the offseason. I think the Cowboys have a lot of problems. I know they've won 12, 12, and 12 in the regular season under Big Mike McCarthy. I don't believe in him as a coach. I think this is going to be his last year. The Eagles got off to a 10-1 start, which is a little bit phony last season because they had been outgained, I think, in 5 of 6 games on their way to 10 wins. And that regression caught up to them, obviously, down the stretch, and their flaws got exposed. But I think they fixed that by hiring 2 really good coordinators, starting on defense. You've got one of the best defensive coordinators in the NFL. And I'm blanking on his name right now because I didn't get any sleep last night. Eagles.
You mean from they used to coach the Bears and
yes.
All of a sudden I'm blanking on his name too.
Kellen Moore is the offense.
Vic Fangio.
Damn it.
He's got a weird name. It always leaves me. That name always leaves me when I'm doing this.
I always get it, but I only slept about 90 minutes. So I'm not
thinking
as quickly as I usually should. So Vic Fangio, I think, is one of the best, if not the best, defensive coordinator. Steve Spagnuolo in Kansas City is a great one. Vic Fangio is right up there. A clumsy head coach, but an outstanding defensive coordinator. Fangio is going to get that defense fixed. And it was kind of a comedy of errors down the stretch last season. We had Matt Patricia calling plays in that Monday night game in Seattle and all the things that went wrong. Kellen Moore's offensive coordinator probably is going to be a good thing. I'm worried a little bit about a tough start because they're changing a lot with that Philly offense, and hopefully Jalen Hurts can adjust to it right away. Hurts was banged up. He was forcing things, trying to make plays. He threw a career-high 15 interceptions last season. Yeah. I'm a big believer in Hurts, and I was saying this 2 years ago when he was runner-up to Mahomes and MVP, and then obviously finished second to Mahomes in the Super Bowl with the Chiefs comeback. I think he's going to bounce back in a big way. I do believe in Hurts. Saquon Barkley with the addition of running back, a weapon who's also a pass catcher out of the backfield, one of the top 5 offensive lines in the NFL. I go on and on. The Eagles have a lot of attributes that I really appreciate, and the Cowboys don't have many. I really thought the wrong team was favored initially there. So I got plus 135, plus 130. I bet that a few times on the Eagles. I actually didn't even get the best number. Circa had up plus 145 for a couple days, and I didn't even realize it. But
your backyard.
30. Well, they didn't have the division odds up on the board in the sports book. I didn't even know they were up. And I found out 2 days later they were up in that 45 and already moved to 30. But that was mispriced in that division. Now you're late to the party with Philadelphia, but I'd still say if you get anything plus money, still take it. I really like the Eagles to win that division. It should be a 2-horse race with the Cowboys. I think the Commanders have a little bit more upside than the Giants because I really, really like Jaden Daniels, the rookie quarterback from LSU. But again, Commanders got a little way to go to make that leap. And I think the Eagles are clearly the best team in this division.
No, I believe you. And now Eagles are plus 100 and Dallas is plus 150. I think the Eagles do it, but I'm going to say they do it 10 wins and not 11. So that's as far as I'm going to go with that. The NFC West, this is an interesting division because you got the Niners still powerful there, but the Rams have been looking good. Seattle, new coach in Seattle, and then the Cardinals are nobody's talking about. Who you got in the NFC West?
Mike McDonald, the new coach in Seattle, is one I really like. I think he's going to be a rising star as a coach. But I did play here. I played the Rams over 8.5 minus 140. And I took a shot on the Rams to win the division, plus 390. You get almost 4-1 in a division where you feel like it's going to be another 2-horse race between the 49ers and the Rams. Why not? I love Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, and don't forget about Kyron Williams, a running back, and Blake Corum, the rookie from Michigan who was drafted.
Yeah, Blake.
They've got a well-rounded offense now behind Matthew Stafford, who's happy with his contract now. He's healthy. He's in camp. A good enough offensive line. Big question with the Rams is going to be defensively, can they overcome the loss of Aaron Donald? I would say yes, because they got a lot of good young talent. 5 of the first 6 picks in the draft by the Rams were on the defensive side of the football. Blake Corum, the running back from Michigan, was the one offensive player they took in the 3rd round. Last year, Donald had only 8 sacks, 53 tackles. Now, it's all about numbers because he's getting double-teamed a lot. That opens up things for other guys on the defense. But, every team's going to lose a piece or two in the offseason. I think the Rams can overcome the loss of Darnold. And, hey, for whatever reason, the Super Bowl loser hangover tends to hit teams more often than not. And maybe it hits the 49ers, right? They already got an issue with Brandon Ayuk, who's unhappy, requesting a trade. Yeah. If you go back and watch those 2 playoff games, which I have here in the past week, the Packers should have beat them in San Francisco. The Lions should have beat them in San Francisco. They're a beatable team. It's not a perfect team, talking about the 49ers. So I think the door is cracked open for the Rams to surprise and win that division. But the bigger bet for me is the Rams over the win total of 8.5. They won their final 4 games last season to get to 10-7. And another thing is Sean McVay is one of my favorite coaches in the NFL too. So when you're betting on a win total, you're also betting on or against a coach a lot of times in the NFL, a coach and a quarterback that you like or don't like.
I got Rams to make the playoffs at plus 100. So I'm with you. I don't know if they can overcome the Niners, but they're always good when healthy. Stafford's back at training camp. The schedule is very doable. And look, you said about McVay, one of my larger bets, and I even had a nice middle set up at 7, but I was more shaded to the under, was the Rams under 7.5 last year, went all the way down to 6.5. And I thought I was golden there and was hoping for a 7 too. And all of a sudden they win 10. It's like, okay, well, what am I doing? Bet against good coaches. I kind of kicked myself. And now everyone was on it too. I was just felt good that I was one of the first people on it back in April or May, but that didn't freaking matter. So yeah, I'm betting them to make the playoffs for sure. AFC North now, Steelers is what I have under 8.5. Now I got that back when it was plus 100. Now it's minus 165, but I still like it under 6. I don't know why they did this Russell Wilson and Justin Fields thing. Jesus, man. I can't think of 2 quarterbacks that are probably worse for each other in a locker room than those 2 together. And under their current situations, you got Fields thinking he was going to be a multimillionaire going to a $3 million contract. And then you have Russell Wilson, who's getting paid by another freaking team, lots more than Fields. It's just a messy situation. And the schedule, we've all railed on the schedule. We know what's up. I like the Steelers under. What about you in this division?
Well, I'm anti-Browns. I don't like Deshaun Watson at all. And this is not just something new. I've been anti-Watson since I read all the stories about, his off-season issues. Let's say I read all the details. And I said, this guy's mind is not right. There's no way you do what Deshaun Watson did And then as the Browns, if you read all that information, how do you go out and say, we're going to trade all these picks? We're going to guarantee this guy $230 million. It's mind-boggling to me that you could sit in the front office in the NFL and have that information about Deshaun Watson and his character and then say, we're going to sell everything for this quarterback. He's our future, and guarantee the 230 and give away all the picks. Watson's not right. The Browns, I respect defensively and running the ball. I still think the quarterback's a big mystery. Steelers, I don't know how they do it. Everybody was betting against the Steelers last year, right, under the total, and they get to 10 wins with Kenny Pickett at quarterback. It's kind of like smoke and mirrors. How long can they keep pulling this off? I don't know how the Wilson Fields competition is going to work out. I would assume Russell Wilson starts the season at quarterback, and at some point when they're losing, they're going to try Justin Fields and see how that works out. The worst to first team I like the most in the NFL is pretty obvious, and that's the Bengals. Joe Burrow and the Bengals minus 165 to win this division because they were 9-8 last season.
Plus 165.
Plus 165, sorry. Did I say minus?
Yeah, you did, but I knew it was plus.
Plus 165. Yeah, I wouldn't lay it. Plus 165 on the Bengals to win the AFC North. They get a last place schedule as a 9-8 team. And the Ravens have a much more difficult schedule. And I'm a little bit down on the Baltimore defense and some of the losses, including McDonald, the defensive coordinator. I don't think Baltimore is going to be as good on the defensive side. And Lamar Jackson doesn't exactly have a great group of wide receivers. I think Jackson would kill for the group of wide receivers the Las Vegas Raiders have. He doesn't have that great a group with the Ravens. I think the Bengals clearly the prime candidate to go from worst to first in the division in the NFL, and plus 165. I thought it was a very good number. That's what I like the most in that division.
You know, it's a good number for sure. I'm a little worried about how they start with Joe Burrow, and is he truly healthy? I don't know. They did lose a coordinator there, but I mean, this is a tough division in general, and the Ravens probably will take a step back. I actually have a middle set up with the Ravens under 11.5 and over 10.5. I chickened out. I handicapped it. Like, I could see the Ravens getting to 11, but I figure I'm just gonna eat the juice and go for a middle on this. But the Steelers also with the Mason Rudolph thing, I felt like he was all of a sudden finally developed and almost like Jordan Love-esque at the end of the season last year, and then you dump him after all these years of developing him. I was really scratching my head over that, and maybe he, if Will Levis doesn't do it with the Titans, maybe this is your comeback player of the year. That's some massive plus 100 type, 100 or plus 1,000 or 10,000 or whatever it is. I'm sure it's probably 10,000. 100 to 1 is what I'm trying to say. It could be something to look at.
I don't know. It's one thing about the mainstream media picking up on sports betting that I don't like is all these plus 20, the plus 700, plus 800. Hey, it's 7 to 1 odds, 8 to 1 odds, 25 to 1, things like that. I think it's much easier for, I would say, beginning sports bettors to understand the 25 to 1 than it is 25 followed by a bunch of zeros and they don't really know what they're betting.
I agree, man. I think they should just dumb it down if that's the fan base that they're advertising to anyway, right? So they make the change. All right, we got about 10 to 12 minutes left here. I would say AFC South is next, and I'm just going to say I bet the Jaguars to make the playoffs at plus 130. Nobody's talking about them. Everyone's ripping on Trevor Lawrence, but maybe the contract is just something that they needed. I like their new defensive coordinator, Ryan Nielsen. And if you listen to the Simple Handicap with Adam Chernoff, he did a great little interview with one of their beat writers. His name was, I believe, was Demetrius Harvey. And he talked about the scheme that they're going to be running and the fact that, Brian Thomas is such a great draft pick for them. They're going to be throwing it deep. I think this is, nobody talking about the Jaguars. I'm not going to be on the Texans with everybody else. I'm thinking maybe this is Trevor Lawrence has been a winner his whole life. I'll take him to make the playoffs plus 130.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue with you here. I didn't like the Jaguars last year in this division when they were the favorites. And I was trying to find a team that I thought could pull off the surprise, and I picked the wrong one. I picked the Titans a year ago in this division. Things fell apart. It's kind of hard to believe Mike Vrabel and Bill Belichick are sitting on the sidelines, not coaching this year. But
it is.
This time I went with the Colts, and this is not a bet I've made. I'm going to tell you this is just an opinion because there's a big difference between opinions and whether or not you're putting money behind it. But I took a shot on the Colts to win this division as a pick in our magazine just because I think Anthony Richardson is a athletic freak that if he can actually stay healthy, might surprise a lot of people about how good and how talented he is. And actually, if you look at the Colts last season, they were a hair away from making the playoffs with a lot of things that went wrong. And the Texans kind of fit the profile that the Packers are in for me right now, where the betting public is crazy about this team suddenly after a year ago not liking this team. And that's a formula for disappointment a lot of times when you're betting the NFL. Betting public a little bit too high on the Texans. Think about it. A year ago at this time, everyone thought the Texans were trash, right?
Yeah.
Now, all of a sudden, the Texans clearly the favorites to win this division. C.J. Stroud's the top 5 quarterback in the NFL, blah, blah, blah.
Ohio State quarterbacks.
Stroud had a phenomenal season. I give him that 23 touchdowns, 5 interceptions for a rookie. It was outstanding what he did. Yeah. But sometimes you're going to get a little, they say the sophomore slump or a little bit of regression. Team's going to be ready for what the Texans are doing a little bit more. Just trying to think contrarian in this division a little bit because I don't want to follow the pack on Houston.
I can't argue with your Colts. I think the Colts are the most unknown team this year, which could mean massive upside, high ceiling, low floor. I just, Richardson is an athletic freak, and he had all the talent in the world when he was at the Gators. I think, sure, this absolutely could be a surprise team, and Shane Steichen did a fantastic job. AFC East, a lot of folks are on the Jets. I'll admit I was one of the first people on the Jets this year. I'm just kind of fading the Bills a little bit more lately after them losing coordinators and McDermott's, on the hot seat, and they've kind of got rid of the receivers. How can Josh Allen just keep staying healthy and doing it every single year? And the defense is taking hits. The Jets at least have the Broncos and the Vikings for their at-large, and they do have the Steelers for an at-large, which is a winnable game. It's probably more of a push, but since it's in Pittsburgh. But if Aaron Rodgers can just be a glimpse of himself, they should win the division.
I bet the Jets plus 210 to win the division. And I'm not a Dolphins guy necessarily, not a big believer in Tua. I think the Vic Fangio loss at DC is going to hurt the Dolphins as well. Yeah, they got a lot of exciting pieces. Fantasy football players love the Dolphins, right? When you look at the numbers some of those guys can put up offensively. I agree with what you said about the Bills. I like what the Jets did in the draft, too. They took Olu Fashanu, big tackle from Penn State, when the fans and the media were screaming, get Aaron Rodgers some weapons. Now, they got a great weapon for Rodgers and Garrett Wilson, who's an emerging star wide receiver. You got to build the offensive line, and the Jets have done a really good job of that in the offseason. So I know Rodgers is kind of a diva. He's become a soap opera star, carries a lot of baggage. It's the Jets. They acquire Rodgers, and they get a guy who is a nonstop story off the field, but he's only been on the field for about 3 plays. Finally, hopefully, we get to see Rodgers complete or plays most of the games this season, because if you have a futures bet on the Jets, and I do too, and I did not last season, but if you got one, you're hoping Rodgers stays healthy. But even if he doesn't, see, last season the Jets quarterback production was comically bad. The 3 quarterbacks they used combined for 11 touchdowns and 15 interceptions, and they still went 7-10, and that's because they got a top 5 defense in the NFL. Right. And for me, that's the foundation of the Jets play here. Is Rodgers going to come back? Hopefully, he's going to run an efficient offense. Could be, a good leader, and then you got a top 5 defense on the other side that's going to help you win that division. And the Jets have a little bit better schedule than the Dolphins and Bills as well.
Yeah, I'm with you. Tyrod Taylor is a fantastic backup, so I trust him to get he's probably the best backup in football, in my opinion. So 100% agree on all that. Let's move on to the final AFC West. Who you have out of the West?
Chargers all the way. And
is that your shirt? Is that why you wore the
that's why I wore the shirt today. San Diego, LA Chargers. When Jim Harbaugh first made the jump and got hired, I said, I'm not going to buy into all the Harbaugh hype right away. I think there might be some value in fading this team. But then the more I watched all the moves the Chargers make, they were making all the right moves in the offseason. I'm reading all the stories out of camp. The players, even guys like Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, they're buying into everything, all this enthusiasm Harbaugh's selling. This has been a clumsy organization, a clown show for the most part. It's a talented team that's been sabotaged by poor coaching for years. Harbaugh is going to do a 180-degree turn with this franchise in terms of the attitude and the professional approach. He walks in, he inherits an elite quarterback in Justin Herbert. The young receivers are better than people think. A lot of handicappers are emphasizing, well, they lost Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. Those guys were always injured too much and off the field too much anyway. These young receivers are going to be really good. The offensive line, you've got Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt, the number 5 pick from Notre Dame. I love that draft pick. 2 of the best young tackles in the NFL, and an offensive line I believe is going to be in the top 10. On defense, the run defense is a little bit of a problem. There's some questions over there, but Harbaugh's also hired a great coaching staff. They had a couple draft picks I really like, a couple moves in the offseason. I think this defense is going to be okay.
Junior Colson, their Michigan linebacker, I think he took him over Blake Corum, and that's why Blake Corum went to L.A. I'm sure Harbaugh wanted, they can still hang out since they're both in L.A., but Harbaugh wanted them both.
One other point I have to make about the Chargers, because even if you're not buying in, you have to buy in after you look at the schedule. They got a last place schedule, Patriots, Titans, you get Cardinals, you get all the last place teams, the Panthers. You also get to play the Raiders and Broncos twice. When you look at this schedule, I think 8.5 is really low win total here. This is my favorite win total play. Played at over 8.5 minus 145. Also took a shot on the Chargers to win the division because their schedule's so easy, so soft. And then the Chiefs have maybe the most difficult schedule in the NFL, or close to it. And they play on 6 days of the week, every day except Tuesday. I think the Chiefs might just say, hey, we could show up in the playoffs and win, and not emphasize winning the division and getting home field as much. But anyway, there are a lot of factors here I think point to the Chargers. Hopefully I'm right, because I've been talking about this a lot. And, the more I look at it, the more I believe. And I'm reading Chargers reports all the time, and I'm buying in on this team. And this is my best bet for a win total over 8.5.
All right, well, I got Jim Harbaugh 14-1 to win Coach of the Year, because it's a story. It's a good story. Now, unfortunately, it's a West Coast team when you have East Coast voters, but I might hedge that out a little bit with a little Salah and Raheem Morris. But 14-1, man. This is the story. 5 wins last year with a quarterback. How do you get 5 wins when your quarterback's not injured? That's how bad this is, but that's also how good this quarterback it can be with a great coach like Jim Harbaugh. I'm a big Jim Harbaugh fan. I think he's already a top 3 NFL coach right now. 8.5 does feel low. I might be making that bet after the show and hunting around for some numbers. Well, let's really quick do the SEC, Big 10, and Big 12. What about the SEC? Do you have anything in that division, or conference, now that we're in college football? What are your thoughts?
Well, for the 3rd year in a row, I'm going to play Ole Miss over the win total. I'm losing some value here, because the win total the first time I played it was 6.5. Last year it was 7.5, and now it's 9.5. But I'm playing Ole Miss over 9.5, and to make the playoffs at minus 130. Lane Kiffin is an elite coach, whether you like him or not. He's really used the transfer portal to his advantage. If you look at the Ole Miss depth chart, 10 veterans starting on each side of the ball. Jackson Dart's back as an experienced quarterback, accurate passer, strong runner. Accounted for 37, 55 total yards and 31 touchdowns last season. Did not turn it over much. Ole Miss was 11-2, double-digit losses in Alabama and Georgia. No shame in that. The schedule's more manageable this time. Home game against Georgia. Also Oklahoma at home. Toughest road trips are LSU and Florida. I think the Rebels are going to make a run toward the top of the SEC, win 10 in the regular season, and reach the playoffs. And that's the team I like the most in the SEC.
All right, I'm going to fade Bama under 9.5 wins. Brutal schedule, new coach, honeymoon year for Kalen DeBoer. And I like Kalen DeBoer. I think he's probably the best hire you can have after Nick Saban.
So do I. Yep.
but it's just going to take time, and it's a different type of freaking game out there, man. It's a brutal schedule. You're at Wisconsin, which is tricky. Should win, but of course you got Georgia at home. You're at Tennessee. You're at LSU. You have Missouri and at Oklahoma. That's just a tough schedule for losing everybody on your defense but 2 starters. So I'm going with them. I took Florida over 4.5 because that's just a disrespectful line right now, and I think Florida is going to get to 5 or 6. They'll probably, and I'm not sure if it saves Napier's job at 6, but they're going to get 5 or 6 wins.
Well, let me tell you something about that quickly. They'd be better off losing winning 4 games or fewer and firing Billy Napier. Sunbelt Billy is not the guy.
I agree with you, but that's not how,
I know, but the win total, as far as win total, I hear what you're saying. Man, that schedule is brutal. But if I had to play that, I would think Florida could probably get to 5 wins, but I'm not playing it. Yeah.
And I have a sucker bet that I made Missouri to make the college football playoffs. No, not playoffs. To be in the SEC championship game at plus 600. The playoffs was only plus 175. Missouri, I think it's a sucker bet that I made because they're in this situation where a team just comes out of nowhere. They usually fade the next year, but their schedule is just so easy. Them and Ole Miss have the easiest SEC schedules in the whole land. I think it's probably going to be Ole Miss that makes it. I don't think it's going to be Georgia versus Texas. I think one of them's not going to be there. It's probably not going to be Texas. But why not? And I might put a little bit on Ole Miss too. So I'm with you on Ole Miss, by the way. I agree with you. I think it's Lane Train's time to take over now that Saban's gone. How about Big Ten? What do you have there?
Well, I'll tell you what. I've been working on the Big Ten for a VSiN college football preview. I've written up all 18 teams. I've read for hours on this conference. I'm playing Michigan under 9. Wolverines lost 13 players to the draft, most of any program. Only 7 players who started at any time return. Sharon Moore, the new coach, I think he's going to have to work miracles to win 10 games. Now, Alex Orji, the quarterback, unproven. He does have a lot of running ability. Redshirt sophomore who's got some potential. If Michigan does exceed expectations, that's because he's a much better quarterback than we think. But again, he's working behind an unproven offensive line, some wide receivers who are unproven as well. Wolverines play Texas, USC, Oregon, Washington, Ohio State. If they just fall to the top 5 opponents that they face in the preseason, Texas, Oregon, and Ohio State, that makes 9-3 the best case scenario. There's some other games on the schedule I think Michigan can lose. I think this number of 9 is based off reputation, what Michigan's done the last few years. Too many new faces to think 10 wins is realistic. I believe the worst you're going to do if you bet Michigan under 9 is push. So I like that. And I'm also playing Iowa over 8. And this is not a sexy play. A lot of people don't want to bet the Hawkeyes because their offense has been so bad. But Kirk Ferentz, he's an old school coach. He can win games with special teams and defense. I do think this offense is going to be better. Tim Lester, the new coordinator. Cade McNamara, former Michigan transfer, back from a knee injury at quarterback. You got a big, strong line that starts 4 seniors and 1 junior, deep stable of running backs, rock solid defense with 2 of the best senior linebackers in the Big Ten, Jay Higgins and Nick Jackson. Michigan, Oregon, Penn State not on the schedule. Iowa could be favored in 10 games. Catch another break by getting Washington, Wisconsin, and Nebraska all in Iowa City. I think you win at least 8. The win total was 7.5. You can play over 8 at even money. You should at least push, if not win this one. So Michigan under 9, Iowa over 8.
Iowa's got the easiest schedule in the Big Ten. I don't disagree with you at all there. It does suck that my Badgers have to go there, but I will say that James Madison over the last 2 years has been fantastic. And I would even say they could have beat a Nebraska, Wisconsin, Iowa. They played them last year or this year. But guess what? James Madison just transferred to Indiana, including their coach, Kurt Signetti. There's like 15 guys he brought, and he brought the best of the best. And there's a couple other guys that transferred into Indiana. So I have to kind of look at Indiana as James Madison the last 2 years, which I think gets them over 5.5 wins in the Big Ten, especially with that schedule. Absolutely. I think that's just kind of like one that you have to say, look, this team turned into James Madison, and what a great hire. I almost think it's as good as the John Smith hire, but I still have to rank the John Smith hire for Michigan State a little bit more than that. But I'm going with Indiana over 5.5 because that's how good James Madison was last year, and they're just taking the best out of them and the best out of Indiana, combining them. And one little quick thing, I'm really curious on Dylan Raiola from Nebraska. I mean, what's so funny? He's probably going to transfer out there after this year. He actually was here in Chandler 2 years ago and won a championship. Then he won one in Texas. He's like transferring high school 3 times. It's like that's how crazy football's been. But for longevity, I'm not sure if he's going to do it. But I'm sure he's promised a starting job. And Matt Rule it's his second year to turn around. So I mean, if you're looking for a Heisman bet to throw some lunch money on, I don't mind him a little bit. Maybe. Their schedules also, their first 7 games are all W's. Their first 7 games.
I'm serious. 7.
Well, maybe not. Probably not. But listen to this. I have it right here. First 7 games. UTEP, Colorado at home, Northern Iowa. Then you have Illinois at home, at Purdue, who's supposed to be one of the worst in the Big Ten. Then Rutgers at home. And then at Indiana might be that 7th game that's a little tougher. But, geez, I mean, that's a pretty easy first 7 for a Big Ten schedule.
Well, there's no question, but you also look at the Final 5, and the Final 5 are very difficult.
Absolutely.
And Final 5 games are difficult. The one thing I do like Nebraska, I've got Nebraska at 7-5. That was what I wouldn't be surprised if the Cornhuskers lose at Purdue and lose at Indiana. And I know that everybody's going to look at the schedule and chalk those up as wins. Like, oh, those teams are terrible. Those are going to be tough. Those are going to be tough games to win. Don't forget, you're still playing with a freshman quarterback. And there are spots on this Nebraska depth chart that still need some work. And Nebraska, I think, lost 4 games by 3 points last season. This team's still got to learn how to win as well. Now, they're going to win most of those games, but they're going to lose a couple, I think, there that people are chalking up as wins right now. I've got Nebraska at 7-5. Agree with you completely on Indiana over 5.5. I don't think the Hoosiers are the worst team in the Big Ten, like some of the preseason magazines have them ranked. Kurt Signetti's going to do a turnaround job with the Hoosiers, and he's got a soft schedule. And by the way, only thing I'll correct you on is Iowa does not have the easiest schedule in the Big Ten. Rutgers has the easiest schedule in the Big Ten. Check it out when you get a chance. Rutgers does not face any of the top 5 teams in the Big Ten, none of them. And by far the easiest schedule, and that's why the Rutgers win total is at 6.5. Rutgers does not face Ohio State, Oregon, Michigan, Penn State, or Iowa. Unbelievable. Unbelievable breaking the Rutgers schedule.
They deserve it after being in that gauntlet for so many years. And I said the same thing about Indiana. I have them at 7 wins, and their win total is 6, I believe. So I agree with you there. It's about time. It helped the Indiana's, Rutgers, and Maryland's for this change. It hurt the Wisconsin, the Iowas. You can't pencil them into the Big Ten championship no more with a chance. You know, now they actually have to earn the top spot with Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, and all those. Penn State's actually got a pretty decent schedule as well this year too, and that's why a lot of people like them. Do you have time for the Big 12?
I do not. I've got to go.
All right, my man. Hey, no, we passed the time, man. But thank you so much for coming on. Where can our listeners get your great articles and information for the next football season?
You know what? Just check out VSIN on YouTube TV. And if you have YouTube TV, that's a great place to watch us. We got a 24/7 channel on there, and vsin.com, VSIN.com. Hey, it's great to be on with you again, and I'll see you when you come to Vegas in August.
Yes, we'll see you in August. Have a good one, Matt. Talk soon.
Okay, you too. Thanks.
Thanks.
Yeah, I got to run. I'm a couple minutes late.